The church bell tolled, a heavy clang that shattered the Sunday morning calm and Parker's heart with it. At 17, he stood frozen in the pew, his palms sweaty as whispers slithered through the congregation like venom. By the time Pastor Reynolds pointed at him from the pulpit, declaring his love for another boy as sin, Parker knew his life in Willow Creek would never be the same. The small town of Willow Creek, Virginia, was a postcard of American charm. White picket fences, oak-lined streets, and a church at its heart that held the community's pulse. Parker Ellis, with his warm brown eyes and quiet charm, had grown up in its embrace, singing hymns and stacking chairs after services. But that Sunday, when his secret love for Caleb, the soft-spoken boy from the choir, was exposed by a spiteful classmate, the church turned on him. His mother's tears stained the family Bible, and his father's silence cut deeper than any sermon. Banished from the congregation, Parker fled Willow Creek, vowing never to return to the place that broke him. 10 years later, Parker stood at the edge of town, now 27, his heart pounding as he faced the same church steeple that haunted his dreams. He wasn't the scared boy anymore. Seminary school, a new city, and a hard-won confidence had reshaped him into a man who carried both scars and purpose. Yet, the letter in his pocket, a desperate plea from Willow Creek's struggling church, had pulled him back. They needed a pastor. They needed him. The irony wasn't lost on Parker as he stepped onto the church grounds, his polished shoes crunching against gravel. The building was weathered now, paint peeling like the community's fading faith. He'd been shunned, branded an outcast, yet here he was, called to save the very people who'd cast him out. Could he forgive them? Could they accept him? Inside, the air smelled of old hymnals and wax. The congregation, smaller than he remembered, turned as one when he entered. Gasps rippled through the pews. Mrs. Hargrove, who'd once baked him cookies, clutched her purse. Mr. Tate, the deacon who'd escorted him out a decade ago, narrowed his eyes. But there, in the front row, was Ethan, the man who'd become his anchor in the years since. Ethan's sandy blonde hair caught the light through the stained glass windows, and his steady gaze gave Parker the courage to step forward. "Good morning," Parker said, his voice clear despite the knot in his chest. "I'm Parker Ellis, and I've been called to serve as your pastor." The silence was deafening, broken only by a cough from the back. Then, a voice, sharp and familiar, cut through. "You? A pastor? After what you did?" It was Caleb's mother, her face etched with the same judgment from years ago. Parker's breath hitched, but Ethan's hand brushed his, a quiet reminder of who he'd become. "I'm not here to reopen old wounds," Parker replied, meeting her gaze. "I'm here to heal them. For all of us." The murmurs grew, a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Parker knew this wouldn't be easy. Willow Creek was a town bound by tradition, and his return, as an openly gay man, no less, threatened to unravel it. But he wasn't alone. Ethan, who'd faced his own battles coming out in a different town, stood by him, their love a quiet rebellion against the past. That first Sunday, Parker preached about forgiveness, his words weaving through the tension like a thread. He spoke of second chances, of love that transcends judgment, and of a God who sees the heart. Some faces softened, others remained stone. As the service ended, a young girl, maybe 15, with wide eyes and a rainbow pin on her backpack, approached him. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought I was alone." Parker's throat tightened. He saw himself in her, the fear and the hope tangled together. "You're not," he said softly. "Not anymore." The days that followed were a battlefield. The church board, led by Mr. Tate, questioned Parker's appointment, citing moral concerns. Rumors swirled about his relationship with Ethan, who'd moved to Willow Creek to support him. Yet, Parker pressed on, visiting homes, listening to stories, and rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. He met resistance. Angry letters slipped under the parsonage door, cold shoulders at the diner, but also glimmers of change. The girl with the rainbow pin, Lily, started attending youth group, her courage inspiring others. Ethan was Parker's rock, his humor and warmth a balm after long days. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their rented cottage, Ethan traced circles on Parker's hand. "You're doing it, you know," he said, his voice soft. "You're changing this place." Parker leaned into him, the weight of the day lifting. "I just hope it's enough." But trouble was brewing. A petition to remove Parker gained traction, led by Caleb's mother and a vocal faction. They planned to confront him at the next town hall, threatening to tear the church apart. Parker knew this fight would test everything: his faith, his love, and the fragile hope he'd planted in Willow Creek. As the sun set, casting shadows over the town, Parker felt the weight of his calling. He wasn't just fighting for himself, but for Lily, for Ethan, for every kid who'd ever felt unwelcome in a pew. The road ahead was steep, but for the first time, he believed he could climb it. The town hall loomed like a storm cloud over Willow Creek, its brick facade a stark contrast to the vibrant autumn leaves swirling outside. Parker stood at the podium, his heart a drumbeat against his ribs, as faces, some familiar, some hostile, filled the folding chairs. The petition to oust him lay on the table, a stack of signatures that felt like a betrayal written in ink. Ethan sat in the front row, his steady presence a lifeline. Parker had spent the week preparing, but no sermon could shield him from the venom in Caleb's mother's eyes. Mrs. Lawson stood, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "This church has stood for generations on God's word," she declared. "You, Parker Ellis, are an affront to that legacy." The room erupted, some clapping, others shouting in protest. Parker gripped the podium, his knuckles white. "I'm not here to defile tradition," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I'm here to honor it by showing what love and faith truly mean." His words hung in the air, met with a tense silence. Then Lily, the girl with the rainbow pin, stood up. "He's helped me," she said, her voice small but fierce. "He's made this church feel like home again." A few heads nodded, but Mrs. Lawson's scowl deepened. The meeting stretched on, arguments clashing like swords. Mr. Tate accused Parker of pushing an agenda, while others, like Mrs. Hargrove, admitted they'd seen his kindness firsthand. As the clock ticked past 9, Parker felt the weight of every eye on him. He closed with a plea: "Judge me by my actions, not my past. Let me prove I belong here." The vote was postponed, but the tension lingered. Over the next weeks, Parker threw himself into his work, determined to show his worth. He organized a food drive for the town's struggling families, his sleeves rolled up as he sorted cans alongside Ethan and Lily. The youth group grew, drawing kids who'd felt invisible in Willow Creek's rigid social fabric. Parker listened to their stories, of bullying, of fear, of hiding who they were, and shared his own, weaving a fragile bond of trust. Ethan, ever the optimist, kept Parker grounded. One night, as they cooked dinner in their cozy kitchen, Ethan teased, "You're turning this town upside down, Pastor Parker." His grin was infectious, and Parker laughed, pulling him close. "Only because you're holding me up," he murmured, their foreheads touching. But the opposition wasn't idle. Mrs. Lawson rallied her supporters, spreading rumors that Parker's sermons were corrupting the youth. Anonymous notes appeared at the parsonage, some quoting scripture, others laced with slurs. Parker read each one, his heart heavy but resolute. He wouldn't run again. One afternoon, while visiting a sick parishioner, Parker ran into Caleb, his first love, now a quiet man with tired eyes. Caleb had stayed in Willow Creek, married, and kept his head down. "I never wanted you to leave," Caleb said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was too scared to stand up for you." Parker's chest ached, memories of stolen glances and secret notes flooding back. "You were a kid," he said softly. "We both were." Caleb's apology was a small balm, but it reminded Parker how much had been lost, and how much he still had to fight for. The church's financial troubles added another layer of strain. The roof leaked, attendance dwindled, and bills piled up. Parker proposed a fundraiser, a community fair to unite the town, but the board hesitated, wary of his leadership. Ethan, ever practical, suggested inviting nearby churches to join, framing it as a chance to rebuild Willow Creek's spirit. Reluctantly, they agreed. As preparations began, Parker noticed a shift. Families who'd once avoided him brought pies for the fair. Teens from the youth group volunteered, their laughter filling the churchyard. Even Mr. Tate, gruff as ever, helped set up tables, muttering about giving it a chance. Parker dared to hope, but the shadow of the petition loomed, and Mrs. Lawson's faction grew louder, planning a final push to remove him. One evening, as Parker and Ethan walked through the fairgrounds, string lights twinkling above, Ethan squeezed his hand. "You're not just saving this church," he said. "You're saving yourself." Parker's eyes stung, the truth of it settling deep. He'd come back to prove a point, but now he saw it was about more, about healing, for himself and for Willow Creek. The fair was days away, and with it, the vote that would decide Parker's fate. He lay awake at night, Ethan's steady breathing beside him, wondering if love and faith could truly conquer a town's prejudice. The answer, he knew, was coming, whether he was ready or not. The fairgrounds buzzed with life, a kaleidoscope of laughter, music, and the scent of cotton candy. Parker moved through the crowd, his heart swelling as he watched Willow Creek come together. Kids chasing balloons, neighbors sharing stories, and even the sternest faces softening under the glow of string lights. But beneath the joy, a current of tension ran strong. Tonight, the church board would vote on his future. Ethan was at the bake sale, charming customers with his easy grin, while Lily ran a face-painting booth, her rainbow pin gleaming proudly. Parker paused to help a group of teens set up a dunk tank, their banter a reminder of why he'd returned. These kids deserved a place where they could be themselves, just as he'd once longed for. As dusk settled, Mrs. Lawson approached, her petition in hand. "This changes nothing," she said, her voice cold. "You don't belong here." Parker met her gaze, his resolve unshaken. "Maybe not to you," he said, "but I belong to them." He nodded toward the youth group, their laughter cutting through the evening air. The vote was held in the church basement, the air thick with anticipation. Mr. Tate read the petition aloud, his voice gruff but less certain than before. One by one, board members spoke. Some echoed Mrs. Lawson's call for tradition, while others, like Mrs. Hargrove, praised Parker's work. "He's brought life back to this church," she said, her voice trembling. "Isn't that what matters?" When it was Parker's turn, he stood, his hands steady. "I came back because I believe in this community," he said. "Not to change it, but to remind it what love looks like. If you vote me out, I'll leave. But I'll never stop fighting for a place where everyone is welcome." The room fell silent. Ethan's hand found his under the table, a quiet anchor. The vote was close, 5-4 in Parker's favor. Relief washed over him, but Mrs. Lawson's glare promised the fight wasn't over. As the meeting ended, Lily hugged him, tears in her eyes. "You stayed," she whispered. Parker hugged her back, his heart full. The fair's success brought a surge of donations, enough to fix the church roof and fund youth programs. Parker's sermons began to draw larger crowds, his words resonating with those hungry for change. But the victory was fragile. Mrs. Lawson's faction boycotted services, and whispers of a rival congregation forming spread through town. One afternoon, Parker found an old journal in the parsonage attic, filled with notes from the church's former pastor. The pages spoke of unity, of a community that thrived when it embraced all its members. Inspired, Parker began a series of open forums, inviting the town to discuss faith, love, and acceptance. To his surprise, Caleb attended one, sitting quietly in the back. After, he approached Parker. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice thick. "I wish I'd been braver." Parker smiled, the past softening. "You're here now? That's enough." Ethan noticed the toll the fight was taking on Parker, late nights planning, early mornings worrying. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Ethan pulled him close. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said. "We're in this together." Parker kissed him, grateful for a love that felt like home. But the rift in Willow Creek deepened. Mrs. Lawson's group held a rival service, drawing away families. Parker felt the sting of rejection, but he focused on those who stayed. Lily, who was thriving, Mrs. Hargrove, who now greeted Ethan warmly, and new faces, drawn by Parker's message of inclusion. As winter approached, a crisis hit. A fire broke out at the community center, where the youth group met, leaving it unusable. Parker saw an opportunity. He proposed moving the group to the church, turning it into a safe space for all. The board, now leaning in his favor, agreed. Ethan helped paint the walls, and Lily hung pride flags alongside crosses, a symbol of a new era. The night of the youth group's first meeting in the church, Parker stood at the door, watching kids stream in, some openly queer, others just curious. Their laughter filled the space, a sound of hope. But as he locked up, a brick sailed through the window, shattering glass and his fragile optimism. Scrawled on it was a single word, abomination. Parker's hands shook as he swept up the glass, Ethan by his side. "They're scared," Ethan said softly. "Scared of change." Parker nodded, but the weight of the brick felt like the weight of the town. He knew the road to acceptance was far from over, but for the kids inside, for Ethan, for himself, he'd keep fighting. The broken window gaped like a wound in the church's side, a stark reminder of the hatred still festering in Willow Creek. Parker stood in the sanctuary, glass crunching under his boots, his breath visible in the cold morning air. Ethan's hand rested on his shoulder, a silent promise that they'd face this together. Word of the vandalism spread, and by noon, a crowd gathered, some to help, others to gawk. Lily arrived with her parents, who'd been distant but now carried cleaning supplies. "We don't agree with everything," her mother said, avoiding Parker's eyes. "But this isn't right." Parker nodded, gratitude mingling with exhaustion. The community was fracturing, but slivers of support were emerging. The church board called an emergency meeting. Mr. Tate, his face grim, suggested hiring security, but Parker had a different idea. "Let's hold a vigil," he said. "Not for the window, but for unity. For everyone who's ever felt broken here." The board hesitated, but Mrs. Hargrove's firm nod swayed them. The vigil was set for Friday night. Parker and Ethan worked tirelessly, stringing lights and preparing hymns. Lily rallied the youth group, their energy infectious. As the evening arrived, Parker's nerves frayed. What if no one came? What if the vandals returned? But as dusk fell, cars lined the street, and faces, some familiar, some new, filled the churchyard. Parker stood before them, his voice steady. "This church isn't just brick and glass," he said. "It's us, flawed, hurting, but capable of love." He lit a candle, passing the flame to Ethan, then Lily, until the crowd glowed with light. Even Caleb was there, his wife beside him, their hands clasped. Mrs. Lawson stood at the edge, her face unreadable, but she didn't leave. The vigil shifted something in Willow Creek. The next Sunday, attendance spiked, drawn by curiosity or conviction. Parker's sermon was his boldest yet, weaving his own story of exile and return into a call for compassion. "We've all been outcasts in some way," he said. "The question is whether we'll lift each other up or tear each other down." Afterward, a man approached, Mr. Reynolds, the former pastor's son, now a father himself. "I was there," he said quietly, "when they shunned you. I didn't speak up. I'm sorry." Parker's throat tightened. "Thank you," he said, the words a bridge over a decade of pain. But the peace was fragile. Mrs. Lawson's rival congregation grew, meeting in a rented hall. They called themselves True Faith, their sermons laced with warnings about Parker's influence. He felt the divide like a knife, especially when Lily confessed her parents were attending both services, torn between loyalty and fear. Ethan kept Parker grounded, his humor a light in the dark. One snowy evening, as they shoveled the church walkway, Ethan tossed a snowball, catching Parker off guard. Laughter erupted, and for a moment, the weight lifted. "You're doing more than you know," Ethan said, brushing snow from Parker's coat. "This town's starting to see you." The church's youth programs flourished, a beacon for kids like Lily, who was now openly dating a girl from school. Parker mentored them, sharing stories of his own journey. But the vandalism continued, graffiti on the church sign, slashed tires on his car. Each act stung, but Parker refused to retaliate. Instead, he invited the community to paint a mural over the graffiti, turning hate into art. The mural project drew dozens, including some from True Faith. Caleb helped, his brushstrokes steady beside Parker's. "I'm trying to make things right," he said. Parker nodded, the past no longer a chain but a lesson. As spring bloomed, so did hope. The church's finances stabilized, and the youth group planned a pride event, a bold move for Willow Creek. Parker knew it would spark backlash, but he also saw the kids' courage, Lily's especially, and couldn't say no. Ethan designed flyers, his pride in Parker evident in every detail. The night before the event, Parker found a note slipped under the parsonage door. Not hate this time, but a shaky scrawl. "I'm scared, but I want to understand. Meet me." It was signed by Mrs. Lawson. Parker's heart raced. Was this a trap or a turning point? He showed Ethan, who squeezed his hand. "Go," he said. "You've always believed in second chances." Parker agreed to meet her at the church, unsure what to expect. As he waited in the dim sanctuary, The weight of his journey, pain, love, and resilience settled over him. Whatever came next, he was ready. The sanctuary was quiet, save for the creak of pews as Mrs. Lawson sat across from Parker, her hands clasped tightly. Moonlight filtered through the stained glass windows, casting fractured colors across her face. "I don't know why I'm here," she began, her voice brittle. "But I can't stop thinking about that vigil." Parker listened, his heart a mix of hope and caution. Mrs. Lawson spoke of her son, Caleb, and the pain of his silence after Parker's exile. "I thought I was protecting him," she admitted, tears welling. "But I hurt you both." Her words were raw, a crack in the wall she'd built. Parker reached out, his voice gentle. "We all make mistakes. The question is what we do next." She didn't apologize outright, but her presence was a start. They talked for hours, and when she left, Parker felt a spark of possibility. Maybe Willow Creek could heal. Maybe she could, too. The Pride event loomed, and tension gripped the town. True Faith planned a protest, their flyers calling it a stand for morality. Parker braced for conflict, but he and Ethan doubled down, helping the youth group decorate the church with rainbows and banners that read, "Love is love." Lily was a whirlwind, her confidence inspiring even the shyest kids. The morning of the event, Parker woke to find Ethan staring out their window, worry etched on his face. "What if this breaks us?" he asked. Parker pulled him close, their breaths mingling. "It won't, because we're not just fighting for us, we're fighting for them." He nodded toward the kids arriving early, their laughter a defiant melody. The event was a vibrant chaos: music, food trucks, and speeches from queer youth and allies. Lily spoke, her voice steady as she shared her journey of self-acceptance. Parker watched, pride swelling, but his eyes scanned the crowd for trouble. True Faith's protesters stood across the street, signs raised, but they were smaller than expected. Some, like Caleb, had chosen the event instead. As the day unfolded, Parker noticed Mrs. Lawson in the crowd, not protesting but watching, her expression unreadable. He didn't approach her, giving her space to process. The event ended with a dance, kids and families swaying under fairy lights. Ethan pulled Parker onto the makeshift dance floor, their bodies close as they moved to a slow song. "We did this," Ethan whispered, and Parker's heart soared. But the next morning, reality crashed in. True Faith filed a formal complaint with the diocese, accusing Parker of undermining doctrine. The bishop, a distant figure who'd approved Parker's appointment, summoned him to Richmond. Parker felt the ground shift, but Ethan's steady hand kept him anchored. "You've faced worse," Ethan said. "You'll face this too." In Richmond, the bishop was stern but fair. "You're stirring things up, Parker," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Some say you're saving that church. Others say you're tearing it apart." Parker defended his work, citing the youth group, the fundraisers, the vigil. "I'm not here to divide," he said. "I'm here to build a church where everyone belongs." The bishop didn't decide immediately, leaving Parker in limbo. Back in Willow Creek, he threw himself into his work, refusing to let fear win. He visited Mrs. Lawson, who'd started attending his services again, sitting quietly in the back. "I don't understand everything," she told him one day, "but I see how you've helped Lily. That matters." The church was thriving, but the diocese's decision loomed. Parker leaned on Ethan, whose unwavering support was a lifeline. One night, as they lay in bed, Ethan traced Parker's jaw. "Whatever happens, you've already won," he said. "You showed them who you are." As the bishop's ruling neared, Parker planned a final sermon, one that would lay bare his heart. He wanted Willow Creek to see the man he'd become, not just the pastor, but the boy who'd been broken and rebuilt by love. The youth group rallied around him, Lily leading a campaign to flood the diocese with letters of support. The night before the sermon, Parker found another note at the parsonage, this time from Caleb. "I'm leaving True Faith," it read. "You showed me what courage looks like." Parker's eyes stung, the weight of his journey settling. He wasn't just saving the church. He was saving pieces of himself, too. As Sunday dawned, Parker stood at the pulpit, ready to face whatever came next, knowing Ethan, Lily, and a growing number of allies stood with him. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, he felt unbreakable. The church was packed, every pew filled, faces spilling into the aisles. Parker stood at the pulpit, his hands steady despite the letter from the diocese burning a hole in his pocket. He hadn't opened it yet. Whatever the bishop's decision, he wanted this moment to be his, to speak his truth to Willow Creek one last time. I was 17 when this church turned its back on me, he began, his voice carrying over the hushed crowd. I thought I'd lost everything, my home, my faith, my family. But I found something stronger, the courage to be who I am. Ethan's eyes met his from the front row, a beacon of love. Lily sat beside him, her rainbow pin gleaming, her parents at her side for the first time. Parker's sermon wove his story into a tapestry of hope. He spoke of the kids he'd met, like Lily, who'd found their voices, of families, like Mrs. Hargrove's, who'd learned to listen, and of a town that could choose love over fear. This church isn't mine, he said. It's ours. And together, we can make it a place where no one is ever shunned again. As he spoke, he saw Caleb in the back, his wife's hand in his, tears streaming down his face. Mrs. Lawson was there, too, her arms crossed, but her eyes soft. The congregation leaned forward, some nodding, others weeping. Parker's voice broke as he closed. I came back to save this church, but you've saved me, too. The applause started slowly, then swelled, a wave of sound that shook the rafters. Ethan stood, clapping fiercely, and Lily joined him. Then her parents, then Mr. Tate. Not everyone rose. Mrs. Lawson stayed seated, but the tide had turned. Parker stepped down, enveloped in hugs, Lily's the tightest. You did it, she whispered. After the service, Parker opened the bishop's letter with Ethan by his side. The diocese had ruled in his favor, citing his transformative leadership. True Faith's complaint was dismissed, and Parker was confirmed as Willow Creek's pastor. Relief flooded him, but it was the faces around him, Ethan's, Lily's, even Caleb's, that mattered more. The months that followed were a slow mending. Mrs. Lawson began attending regularly, her conversations with Parker cautious but earnest. True Faith dwindled as families returned, drawn by the church's new spirit. The youth group grew, a haven for kids of all identities, and the mural on the church wall became a town landmark, a riot of color proclaiming love. One spring evening, Parker and Ethan hosted a barbecue at the parsonage, the backyard filled with laughter. Lily brought her girlfriend, and Caleb shared stories of his own journey toward acceptance. Mrs. Hargrove brought her famous cookies, and even Mr. Tate cracked a smile. As the sun set, Parker and Ethan slipped away to the porch, their hands intertwined. You changed this town, Ethan said, his voice warm. Parker shook his head. We did. You, me, Lily, everyone who dared to hope. Ethan kissed him, soft and sure, under the fading light. Years later, Willow Creek was unrecognizable, a place where pride flags flew alongside church banners, where kids like Lily could thrive without fear. Parker, now a seasoned pastor, never forgot the boy he'd been, nor the man who'd stood by him. The church, once a place of pain, was now a sanctuary of love, its doors open to all. As Parker lit a candle during a quiet Sunday service, he thought of the vigil that had started it all. He'd come back to save a church, but in the end, it was the church, and the people in it, that had saved him. The flame flickered, steady and bright, a testament to a town reborn.